Present Productions presents the Math of ESP. Why it works even if you don't believe in it. Okay, I've been talking about symbology here and how certain things kind of amuse me because too much stuff. Like I said, you get the basic mathematics, and I did originally back about 1980 or so. I'm sorry, 1989, 80. Well, actually 87. I started. I started trying to write it down in a mathematical format. Realized that the computers were just barely getting into that phase, and I realized, well, this really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And this is relatively hard to try and explain to people who immediately, oh God, it's math, I get turned off. I'm dyslexic, man. I don't want to deal with this stuff myself, so why would I want to waste a lot of time pointing it out? And the reason I'm pointing this out at this point and with this is because I'm showing how symbology actually works and how people thoroughly mislead themselves time and again with stuff. The Star Trek phaser where it actually shoots a blast and does something, it's kind of realistic. To conceive of something that would do that, much like just hitting something with a laser beam until it melts down. The idea of just shooting a little projectile, not that it can't be done, but you're in either an artificial gravity or a container that if you puncture it, it probably, if you're in the room that gets punctured, there's a good probability you're either going to be fighting for your life real fast or you're going to be dead. Okay? So these bing, bing, bing that, they blow holes through stuff, but somehow they ricochet around inside. Yeah. People get this whole idea of that's what space really is. And they don't really stop and look at what all is there. And I know it was mentioned in a sci-fi story a long time ago that I read, and it was probably in and around that same point in time that I was paying attention to meteorites and asteroids and stuff as well. Shooting stars and things were way back before the sci-fi stuff as a little kid. But it dawned on me that, hey, you throw a rock down on a planet, and the extinction of the dinosaurs is blamed on a meteorite, folks. An asteroid hitting the planet, yeah. So throwing a rock is pretty powerful, actually. And yet you have all these people, oh, we're going to fire a missile up and do this, that, and they don't stop and think about what all is involved in trying to get the missiles up there. And one of the things I pointed out with Occupy ISS is that you get up into space, and all the criminal element governments that are down here that like Trump that want to send military people up there to shoot you down and kill you and put you back in jail type lifestyles, they have one big problem. They're coming up out of gravity well, and you're up there and all you got to do is throw a rock at them. I mean, literally a baseball-sized rock hitting the space shuttle would be extremely damaging and quite possibly very deadly. A rock the size of a baseball hitting the International Space Station, equally deadly. Okay? Just a rock. So the idea that you have to go out there with really big guns is a fallacy. All you have to do is be able to project something out from you, whether it's a chunk of ice or a piece or a bag of garbage or a tin can or a piece of rock, and when it hits whatever other object is coming, coming at it, chances are the two of them are going to collide at something more than you normally think about, because the objects are going to be moving in the hundreds to thousands of miles per second type of a thing. Okay, And I pick on I pick on Revelation somewhat. I pick on the Bible preachers mostly because they're the ones who do the best job of running around with their, oh, there's just one sentence and that's all we're going to use type stuff. The four horsemen of the apocalypse, they've been around, talked about, all through my life. Like I said, in 1965, 7 years of age at Disneyland, people walked out of a crowd, pointed their finger at me and said, hey, you're the white horseman of the apocalypse, turn around, walk back into the crowd. So I'm familiar with the terminology of it, but because of my extreme distaste for the Bible and stuff like that, I never bothered to get into it. But I did hear a lot of people, oh, the four horsemen are going to be this and the four horsemen are going to be that. Well, if you read Revelations 19:11, and I did not really ever stop and look at that passage until December of 2016, which is when I put this thing together, November 2016, right around there. It specifically says that this person, this entity, will be using the armies of heaven to follow him. Now, if you go out and you look at the conspiracy people, and go read your own Bibles for that, the thing. But the conspiracy people, oh, the white horseman is this country, or it's that country, or it's this thing, or it's that thing. And every last one of them, they miss that Revelations 11:19 thing that very specifically says that it's the armies of heaven. The armies of heaven would never realistically be your evil empire government with, physical military war machines, okay? The armies of heaven would be something that the heavens would be able to control that humans couldn't. Weather, earthquakes, tsunamis, plagues, fire from the sky, all the stuff that they talk about in Revelations, yes. So you see how easy it is that you extract just the one or two little pieces. There was one I was reading where, I forget which horseman they were talking about, but they actually sat there and said, well, if you take this color out of this country's flag, and this color out of that country's flag, and this one over here, so you have the four horsemen. 4 different countries that are basically fighting amongst themselves and everybody else, but they're going to band together to create 4 entities, one of which is something that doesn't use normal everyday human physical weapons. Okay, so as I say, symbols are kind of interesting how they get lost in this. The same thing happens with other conspiracy theory stuff. It's not that they're wrong, okay? You have this situation going on. How long the government has been aware of this, for me, based off of Trump's tweet, is they haven't been totally aware of this. They have been very much aware of this. They knew that they were running into trouble. They knew that there would be problems, and they probably sat there and thought about a few deaths and diseases and stuff breaking out. But they never thought of it being at this level, this many, where every day you're going to have 2 chances, 1 million bacteria. One of them has a chance to, mutate, and 1 virus. One of them has a chance to mutate every single day. Probably more often than that, but I'm being very, very polite with the numbers I'm using here. And when you're looking at all of this, and you're looking at something like the conspiracy theory people that are running around screaming about the FEMA camps, Walmart being FEMA camps, the reported just huge stacks of coffins in different places. Somebody I know told me that, hey, my son works in a mortuary and they've been told to put a bunch of extra coffins into storage. Stuff like that. It's kind of interesting, but the chemtrails everybody is getting, drugged and virused and the vaccine stuff and things like that, where people are afraid of stuff. it goes both. It literally goes both ways. Okay, the Zika virus. There was a big thing going on with that. I picked up on it kind of in the middle and sat there and said, "Oh yeah, this is definitely something you need to worry about because I'm already looking at this." And then as I kind of started following into it and tracing it back, I found out, oh, this is a virus that was known for the past 40 years, and most of the data coming in is from people who are now being caught manipulating that data to try and put it at a higher level. And at that same point in time, the United States starts doing their massive going around spraying for Zika virus, mosquitoes, and people start reporting, thousands of birds drop out of the sky. Some guy, people's, entire bee farms are dropping dead. Whatever they put in that Zika virus, spray over the towns and the cities and stuff was dropping an awful lot of animal life dead on the spot. There definitely is something fishy about what they're doing. And then shortly after I start this stuff, you start seeing that conspiracy people actually are throwing up stuff saying, hey, they're changing their mind. They're not going to try and crash the economy and stuff like that. The economy is going to crash. You have no choice. It's going to happen. Okay, this much going on. You have so much weather stuff. The United States is literally an importing nation, and all the countries it imports from, China, Chile, Argentina, Israel, the Middle East, different places in the Middle East, the subcontinent, India, Bangladesh area, Pakistan, you've got all across Africa itself, all these different places. Everybody's getting wiped by these storms. Okay? It's very, very real. You are losing your infrastructure. It is happening, and yet most people are running around and they're saying, oh, no, it doesn't mean this, it doesn't mean that. We're going to look at just that one thing. We're going to look at just this one thing here. And one of the things, like I put in that other video, CO2, which is a common gas, became the media's hype instead of SO2, which had been the scientific hype in the 60s and early 70s and 1950s even. It had been about SO2, but SO2 is a petroleum byproduct emission from burning both coal and diesel fuel and other poor fuels. So yeah, it's kind of interesting how you want to look the wrong direction, so you make problems for yourself. When you sit down with somebody and they start discussing symbology, whether it's for math or anything else, the first thing you have to do is learn what the symbols mean. And if you don't stop and learn, if you just take somebody else's word for it, if you don't reference it or anything like that, then you get lost and you end up at the wrong place, and you easily allow somebody to pull this kind of stuff over your hood, pull a hood over your head so that you have this kind of stuff happening, and then suddenly this comes up and you're out of luck.